What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Hushlife podcast. This week, Brian had the privilege of sitting down with First Lite co-founder Kenton Carruth. This episode is awesome. It is full of some gems. You do not want to miss it. And make sure you stick around to the end where you can like and subscribe and leave a review on the podcasting platform of your choice. It really helps out this podcast and enables us to make more content just like this. I appreciate it, guys, and enjoy the show.
Guys, welcome back to another edition of the Hushlife podcast. Sitting up in beautiful Ketchum, Idaho, the also known as First Lite World Headquarters, although I guess it's moved technically.
It has. We've moved about 13 miles south
into Haley, Idaho, which I actually had the opportunity to walk through the building today. It's cool, man. It's I went by the old building for old time's sakes.
Right. You know, it was unfortunate. We were going to turn the old building into a big factory store, but the city would not let us do it.
Really?
Yeah.
I've heard rumblings there's a new location for a flagship store, though.
Indeed there is. I just was at a real soft spot for the old building, so I was pretty fired up to have. In fact, we'd already started to do a store maybe 2 years ago, but we were just growing so fast that we had to put personnel in there. But we'd already kind of built out this.
That was the vision.
That was the vision. But instead, it's, here we are. We're going to have a store soon, and I'm pretty excited.
It's pretty wild. Those of you who are not familiar with the Ketchum and Haley area, you probably are more familiar with Sun Valley. That's what all the non-locals would call it, probably, is Sun Valley, Idaho.
For sure. I mean, it's the ski resort's is in Ketchum, sorry, but the ski resort is called Sun Valley, and then there's a town of Sun Valley. But by and large, everything the vast majority of things happen in Ketchum.
It's a beautiful place, I got to tell you. You picked an awesome spot to start a business. I am joined today with one of my favorite people in the world, Kenton Carruth, who was the co-founder of First Lite, along with his business partner, great friend, and co-CEO, Scott Robinson.
That's right.
And it's we're going to dive into a little bit about, Kenton's history and how he and Scott kind of came up with the concept and the idea and eventually built First Lite into what it has become today. We have a long history with these guys dating back to, I want to say 2012 is when we first started chatting with First Lite, and specifically Ryan Callahan back in the day was kind of our main point of contact. And it's an awesome story. That's why I wanted to have you on the podcast. We've done a lot of different interviews, guys like Adam Weatherby, and kind of the history of his family, brand, and business, and all the challenges as an entrepreneur. And so I'm super interested. Walk us through a little bit like your backstory, like as a kid, kind of where you grew up, what you did, maybe college, up to the point, a little bit of pre First Lite.
Well, I lived in Fresno, California, Central Valley, until I was 18, 19. But, as a kid, I had friends that hunted, I had older brothers that hunted. So we all started, bird hunting. And then by the time I was probably 17, big game hunting. But then I went to school in Santa Barbara, and that was just for 4 years. Didn't do anything like that, But moved here in 1990, late 92, early 93. And then from then, we'd go out and go rifle hunting. I mean, not to disparage rifle hunting, but we were not taking it seriously. You'd go shoot the first buck you saw, and it was just kind of something. And then, I don't know, maybe it was about probably 1999 or 2000, a group of us were like, we have to get this archery thing going, and that's when it started. So we all just totally immersed ourselves. Everybody had, we're totally into skiing and totally into mountain biking, and had that was kind of personalities of my peer group, So when it came time to start to do the archery thing, we just totally got into it like crazy, like shooting every day, twice a day. And, and that's how that kind of started. And it's, kind of at the same time. So prior to that, I had kind of switched into being a photographer. And I worked for a guy named Dave Steckline, who, that's kind of how I got started. He was like probably one of the preeminent Western photographers at the time. So it was cool. I was his first assistant. We had big jobs, like Chevy, Copenhagen, Skoll, all kinds of Western stuff. We'd go to the NFR. It was super fun. But then, I started shooting a lot more like snowboarding stuff because that's kind of the world I came from. But it's funny because at the time I enjoyed it and going out and, on the sleds, and it's fun, but I'm starting to like have kids. So, you're kind of like, wow, this isn't really paying the bills for a person or 3 people or whatever. So I transitioned into, studio photography, and it just so happens I kind of figured out how to take pictures of goggles, and we happened at that time had Smith and Scott both here.
Yep.
And it's a huge pain to take, well, certainly back then before the computers were as powerful as they are. So that was kind of, what I was doing. But
it's a product photography of like their goggle lineup for
totally
outdoor stuff.
And it was kind of like, it seems like way more cool than it is. It's so monotonous, man. It's unbelievable. So, and then, too, as things transferred to digital versus film, a lot of my like passion for it kind of dissipated because I really loved the camera as a machine and not so much as a computer.
Yeah.
And it transitioned from maybe 90% shooting and 10% editing to like 10% shooting and 90% editing,
Sure.
So it became this, I don't know, it just kind of lost its spark. And I really probably wasn't that much paying attention to it as much as it was happening in my brain or whatever. And I just started looking for different opportunity. And it was kind of funny because Icebreaker moved here pretty much directly from New Zealand. So the town was just flooded with Icebreaker stuff, I think I probably had 3 or 4 pieces in my closet for like a year before finally I was like, I think all my Polypro or whatever it was got dirty and stinky. And I was like, all right, I got it. I'm going skiing today or backcountry skiing or sledding or whatever. And I tried it. I was like, wow, this is phenomenal. And I really got into it. And at the same time, kind of everybody kind of got into it. But it wasn't until we kind of merged that with the whole bow hunting thing that we're like, wow, this would work really good.
So in this time frame, you guys are still kind of around town doing introductory to archery, if you will.
Yep.
And it just so happened that for those that are not familiar, Icebreaker was like a company based out of New Zealand. They came up with a different type of merino or a different type of technology for wool, merino wool, which how does that differentiate from like the old school wool that we were kind of maybe our dads and grandparents grew up with?
So, pretty simply, the merino, the fiber is just much thinner. So, if you were to like, pull the fiber apart and measure the center of it, it just, when it's thinner, it's just is way less strong in the sense that it's way less likely to make you itch and poke you, know?
Yep.
And then there's all this, there's tons of technology now, super washing and this and that, but which takes the scales off and makes it softer. But at the time, there was there were some other companies, but I don't know, it just so happened that Icebreaker was just making this big push and we all just started wearing it. And we were just like, wow, this is really, I like it a lot better than the poly. And it doesn't smell, which was a big deal, especially if you're doing overnights or multiples and multiple days. So that was kind of the thing. And so then we probably spent 18 months trying to figure out how to get it printed.
So when you first got the Icebreaker in your hand, you obviously wore it for various activities in the mountains, identified A, it was comfortable, B, it wasn't stinking.
Right.
At that point, that was the light bulb of like, how do we transition this to make it like into the hunting space.
100%. I think we're probably sitting by a campfire and like, gosh, it would work so much better if we could get this in camo. And at first it was just like the base layer. Like all I really wanted was the base layer because, you know, for archery, it's September and it's hot and you get to your base layer pretty quick. You can camo. Back then, you know, you had stuff you could put on top. And
those days, your base layer typically was either cotton.
Yes.
Right? So the stuff you'd buy at like a Walmart or sporting goods store that was just printed cotton, or some newer synthetic technology.
Right.
But the drawback of the synthetic is it would just stink immediately, like one use, and it's just terrible.
Totally. Like, you know, even now the synthetic has come a long way and it still is way stinkier, but it back then it was just kind of nasty, you know.
And there wasn't a lot of technical clothing in hunting to begin with those days.
I mean, you know, Cabela's had some of that Microtech stuff, but nothing very technical next to skin, and they had some Gore-Tex stuff, but Sitka had started 2 years before us, maybe 3, but they had super technical outerwear and, you know, mid layers and stuff, but nobody had done merino yet. And it was funny. You bring up an interesting story because I remember being so nervous when Sitka was coming out with merino, because we had been, you know, working on this project for 3 years, but we were this tiny company, you know, that we totally self-funded at first. We had an investor that had like 10%, but we had, you know, we had to grow organically, essentially.
Sure. Yeah.
And all of a sudden I was like, oh boy, these guys, you know, that had, by then Gore-Tex owned them. And we were just like, what's going to happen? But in fact, it was like literally the best thing that probably could have happened, because then everybody was like, wow, that merino stuff does work. Mm-hmm. You know, it like,
almost validated it.
Correct. 100%. Yeah. And that was a big deal. That was a good lesson to learn, because, you know, I felt like, oh gosh, they're going to cut up this, you know, small, tiny piece of pie. But instead, that sort of, you know, them recognizing or validating that made that little piece of pie a vastly bigger piece of pie.
Sure. So around the campfire, you guys are talking about how do we get camouflage onto this merino product?
Yes. That was like an 18-month discovery. So we started it, and then we kind of said, all right, let's try to do this. And then we contacted, you know, a bunch of different companies. It was really difficult, you know.
And again, anybody that's familiar with First Lite, this is well before any proprietary camo of First Lite proper. This is just like, how do I get any type of camo pattern
totally
onto these base layer garments?
100%. And, you know, it was funny because Scott and I, like I said, he worked for Smith at the time. So both of us are kind of coming from this, you know, full-on outdoor world, you know, like winter sports and, you know, mountain biking and that kind of mountain thing. We really hadn't been exposed to the industry that much, you know. So it was funny. We were kind of naive as far as like camo patterns, in the sense that we just kind of got online and started reading forums and stuff, and everybody was like, oh man, the ASAT and the Predator, and, you know, these are the two patterns. And it was funny. We called them both, and the ASAT guy called us back, and away it went with ASAT. But the beauty of the ASAT was that it lent, since it's only a 2-color pattern, it really lent itself to printing.
Yeah.
I mean, had we said at first that we wanted to use a Max 1 right out of the gate, I think the printer would have been like, no, like,
right,
we can't do that, you know, because it's many more colors, you know. So that was super fortuitous. And then
what was the process like? Obviously you didn't really have any manufacturing experience. It's like,
nothing. How
the hell do you go from this idea to suddenly like, all right, I got to find was the goal to take an icebreaker product and print on it, or go try to source your own wool?
We sourced our own.
Okay.
But I will say, you know, essentially you just like get your 5 best fitting shirts and you kind of just try to build, you start to build your spec pack off that. You're like, I like the sleeves of this. I like the cuffs of this. I like the collar of this. But I mean, a lot of it gets lost in translation too. I mean, at first, like we'd get stuff and they'd have like a huge neck hole and shit. Oh my God. But you just learn, you just put your head down and you can't really, I knew it was a good idea, which helps, and I was totally into it.
Did you ever try to attempt to work directly with Icebreaker?
I mentioned it to somebody at the time and they were like, this is not our ethos one bit.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny because, I just, and then
but there's opportunity for
then
that.
They ended up doing a co-op with Cabela's.
How funny.
I know. But at the time I was just, you know what? Actually at the time I just wanted them to do it.
Yeah.
And when they were here, I talked to some people. I was like, why don't you guys just make one piece? Like make a super thin crew neck.
Yeah.
And because that just was like a glaring hole in my kit, like I just wanted a crew neck, thin merino. And they were, fortunately, they said, they was like, that's not what, they were pretty hippie back in the day, I think, then
not really into the hunting scene at all.
No.
Yeah.
So, it was kind of funny. And then, like I said, eventually they did a co-branded thing with Cabela's.
So did you guys come up with the name First Lite and like the business and anything like that?
Susan, Scott's wife, I think, came up with First Lite.
And did you guys do that before ink was printed on this thing?
Oh,
this
yeah.
new piece?
Yeah.
So it was like, we're going to start this new company.
Yeah.
Let's call it First Lite.
Yeah.
What was the vision at the time? Like we need just one crew neck with camo on it? Or did you have a greater picture of like,
We wanted, so the first year we came out with boxers, long johns, a long sleeve shirt, a balaclava, and then like a 3/4 zip thing. So we had 5 products our first year. And it was funny because everybody was like, why are you making camouflage bottoms, And of course that charges like $5 or something. And I was like, I don't know, that's a good question. And, that was like the first thing we sold out of was camouflage bottoms. We were like, well, who would have ever spent $5 extra for camouflage bottoms,
Yeah.
Of course, like that was like the hottest item,
Sure.
But that was kind of it that first year.
And you guys are operating out of your garage.
Yeah. I mean, the very first year we were operating out of my photo studio. So the first 2 years, actually, I had a photo studio, then I got a bigger photo studio, and we were there for like the second one for maybe 2 years. And then we eventually, I think we went to like 4 or 5 or 6 different places before we ended up where we are now.
Did you originally out of the gate, like you and Scott, like filling orders and managing A to Z?
The first year it was so like literally it was upstairs at this their shipping center, quote unquote, and like literally putting stuff in like a UPS pack and sending it out. And I just, I thought it was so efficient because I could, get an address and, press a button and it would spit out. And it was so painful, I think, I think we shipped out, I don't know, maybe $50,000 worth of stuff. And it was all straight up, just put it in an envelope. I mean, put it in a box, send it out. And then,
when you and Scott, like you guys couldn't be more opposite.
Yeah.
In so many ways.
Yeah.
For those of us that know you guys, like it's so interesting, but it always worked.
Yeah.
Because of probably
totally.
the
I think
opposites.
there's just enough overlap. What was somebody explained to be that I'm way more type A than I let myself be, and maybe he's more type B than he's purported. I don't know. It's funny, but there's just enough overlap to where he is, I don't know. It worked pretty well,
Yeah. Did you guys, out of those early years, did you kind of like identify roles, responsibilities, or were you just in the mix, just everybody's doing a little bit of everything?
A little bit of everything. There was, he's definitely like super organized, so he definitely dealt with like all the finance, he's a CPA and that was his, that's kind of
his sweet spot.
Yeah. So in regard to that, and then branding and the marketing stuff was kind of my side. And then we, at first, just shared a lot of the product ideas, and it flowed pretty well, I mean, I wasn't about to be like, hey, Scott, we need to use a different, accounting system or something, I was just satisfied things went well. And fortunately, everything kind of went well. Like, but they don't tell you when you start a business like this is that, unfortunately, it takes a long time to make money.
Yeah.
And the more you make, the more you have to put back in, So, from a strategy perspective, it was nice. It was wise. We only had to sell, 20% of the company to
finance it,
to finance the whole thing.
Yeah.
So that's all we ever had to, sell, because when we went to outerwear in 2012 roughly, that was we had to stroke some big checks.
Yep.
Because the minimums are such that you can't even, factory won't even talk to you unless you're, doing 500 per SKU or something like,
So those early years, was there ever a point where you guys were like, man, I don't know if this is going to work out?
I think maybe Scott was a little more than I was. I don't know. Maybe I was just, I don't know. I just had my head down, and I think, having so much insight into the kind of the financial side and being a little bit more conservative with that, I think was stressful for him, in the sense that he'd be like, I cannot believe we just wrote a check for, whatever it was that represented a humongous part of money that we didn't have. But I'd be like, it'll be all right. And it was.
How long did you guys run, just the two of you, before you decided, like, okay, we need another person to help?
You gotta ask Cal. Cal was our first employee, but it got to the point to where we were just busy, and we literally needed somebody to answer the phone. So the first 2 years, if you called, you talked to me.
Yeah.
And then after that, you talked to Cal.
So for anybody listening that maybe isn't sure what he's meaning, Cal, also known as Ryan Callahan, long-standing employee at First Lite, now with Meat Eater, held a lot of different roles, and one being the very first ever employee of First Lite.
Totally.
And back then, he came from
ASAT.
Right?
That's right, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, we had hired him to do, because at first we couldn't really afford to go to the shows, and he was already kind of driving with ASAT. So we had hired him and Kelsey, I don't know, Clevenberg, his good buddy, and those guys basically, went to all these shows, but then they'd set up the First Lite stuff.
Yeah.
And then after, once Scott and I got too busy, we had hired Cal, but he was this is a funny story. So yeah, he would be, the phone person for sure, customer service, but then all of a sudden this thing called like Facebook started to come on the page, and Scott or I we had like 0.0 interest in Facebook, but we knew it was the next thing, so we had sent Cal to this online Harvard class. And I think he got an A. And he was like, all right, I'm going to take this class, and learn whatever, how the algorithms work, or however it was back then. So, we paid for him, and he took the class, and then he started building out our, Facebook, and then later Instagram stuff.
That's so
yeah,
funny.
No, he is 100%. He started the whole Facebook thing, But like, even to this day, if I'm like really bored, I'll go look at Instagram, like if I'm standing in line in an airport or something like that. But
not really your forte, though.
I don't know. Not really. It just makes me I'm just like, God, why are they doing something so cool? And I'm standing here at the airport, I don't know. But I never walk away feeling like that, or I walk away feeling like I need to buy something. So, I don't know. But it's definitely like I can tell how busy I've been by, if I've been looking at Facebook, that's for sure. Instagram.
God bless guys like you. I always say that to like friends of mine that aren't really active on social media. I'm like, what do you do with your day? Like it's so time consuming.
Right.
And in a way, like it's beautiful that you don't even deal with it. Well, you start looking at like Apple sends you the Sunday screen reports.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm talking about. Like I know.
Yeah.
I mean, trust me, I go into rabbit holes when it comes to like nerding out on stuff. Like I'm not immune to the evil computer by any means, you know, like if I'm gonna, figure out a new bullet for a muzzleloader or arrows, it's like full information binging. I'm sure there's a name. It's like a drug, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I don't know, for some reason the social doesn't. I like the forums.
Yeah. That was a huge part of probably some of your growth back in the day too. Like the forums were in the early 2000s what social media is today.
100%. And I spent a lot of time. I still love like going to Rock Slide, or whatever it is, whatever thing I'm interested in. I'm fascinated with forums. Like if it's a car thing or a side-by-side thing or a motorbike thing or a mountain bike thing, like I can, and it's, it's a interesting thing. You go there and you try to discern who's full of shit or who's, who knows what's up. But I don't know. I don't know. I still go to them all the time, but it definitely doesn't seem quite as much as a millennial thing. I don't know. What do you think?
I think I think it's definitely died down. I think probably the older generation of guys, they're still active to a degree. There's, whether it's Rock Slide or Hunt Talk or Monster Muleys or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, there's some there, but not near as what it once was. But yeah, it's crazy like how much impact those forums did have for information.
You think about it, you're instantly talking to probably the tip of the spear. You're talking to the person who in their, own specific peer group is probably the guy that most people ask.
Yep.
I mean, and that's why I went there. I mean, I still go to Rock Slide all the time. I love it. If I have, whatever, a gear question or, shooting question. I mean, Ryan Avery, that guy's a wizard, as is Robbie Denning. Like those guys, between the two of them, have so much knowledge. It's just cool. It's like an encyclopedia and be able to go there, and
it's a great resource, even as much as it isn't as popular as it was. There's so much data to be found, whether, to your point, if it's gear related, specific hunt related, like somebody's always willing to help answer the question.
Totally. You just have to make sure you're reading somebody that's knowledgeable, because a lot of people, I think, like to speculate.
For sure.
Then that creates problems.
In those first kind of early years, as you guys transition away from just the two of you add one additional person. At that point, like, did you have a clear kind of vision of where you wanted to take the company, or what was the ethos of First Lite going to represent from a mission statement or a vision statement, or were you just kind of like in the mix and like, let's, too busy to think long-term strategically about that?
I would say it was just growth. We were not in a bad way, but it was always kind of like, if we're going to keep this thing going, it needs to grow. But coming from like a winter sport, an action sports background, I would say our ethos was definitely a lot probably different than everything else. We'd just laugh our asses off. We'd see a picture of a guy like with a huge, rack on his back, like climbing out of like a hole, like, or something, doing, or like, wow, he must have shot that deep on his neighbor's property to look that scared when he had a huge rack on his back. Like all these, like, I mean, I'm sorry, but there's so much of the hunting stuff is just, at least back then, was like so over the top. It was like, nobody really would call anybody out on it either. And not that I feel like it was our responsibility to do it, but it was also like, wow, like it just seemed kind of funny at the time how it was fun, over the top stuff was, or like.
So you guys took a little bit of a different approach on maybe the marketing, messaging, branding.
For sure. It was just the only thing we knew.
Yeah.
It was like, that was just, we came from kind of that action sports world, and that's how we had been marketed to our entire lives, So I think that there was a little bit of that, a little bit more of that for sure. But I don't know, things seem to kind of work. So we were just like, all right, let's just steer the course,
So Cal jumped in and set up your Facebook and got you on the socials.
Yeah.
Started helping kind of like grow the community of First Lite.
Totally. I mean, and we were kind of late. Like a lot of these other companies had already, they had a lot more people, I think, working for them, and had already made, a lot of inroads. So I was glad, super fortunate that, how it worked out. So he did that. That was, in hindsight, that was pretty critical.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like we had just gotten thrown by the wayside had there been, it was a wild west back then too. There was all these, you'd have a giveaway or, like that you do now, but there was a lot of people kind of gaming the system in a way. It was really interesting. So you really did have to be kind of savvy on how you didn't want to get a bunch of followers that were bad followers or spend money on it, so he paid attention and did a really good job. Mm-hmm. He basically, then he created his like own persona.
Yeah.
In a great way, but it was like, he did such a good job that he ended up, on Meat Eater. And then, now he's got his own show, and I think,
Absolutely. Yeah. He definitely built himself, through, representing First Lite.
Totally.
His own personal brand that's taken him to a lot of different places. And
he's great. He is so funny. It's unbelievable. He's so exactly who he is too, which is, there's no, he is the person that he purports to be, which is a cool thing in this modern era,
most definitely. One of the things that's always stood out to us, for all the years we've worked with you guys, was the culture that you guys built. You and Scott built a really unique culture with your people. As you continued to like grow and add to the team over time, the one thing that always stood out to us was like how unique the First Lite culture was. And we have this interesting perspective of kind of seeing under the hood of a lot of different businesses within the hunting space that we get to work with. And you really get a feel for the type of culture that the company's built. How did you guys think about that? Or was it even a thought? Or was it like, how did you bring on people that created this unique culture that to this day still resides so many years later?
I would say it was largely just like, as far as the hiring goes, we were very fortunate to have a lot of people want the job. Like some of these jobs that we have hundreds of people apply for. So you really get a good idea about, you get to choose from a wide range. But I would say, I got to give people credit, like whether it be Cal or, hugely Ross, Bridget, but like our first employees, like that's the mortar. That's what, and if you screw those couple hires up, it could be hugely painful. Yep. Because, they are very similar to, kind of everybody's kind of general thought, but then, then they go out and start hiring. And Ross, I think, is fantastic at hiring. Bridget's fantastic at hiring. And they just kind of can identify like-minded individuals, and then...
Because Ross Copperman was employee number 3, if I'm not mistaken.
I think 3
or 4, maybe.
He and Casey were pretty close, I think. Yeah.
So another person that's to this day still with the brand and had a long track record of success. And all these guys have held a bunch of different roles. But yeah, that's super interesting. Like in a way, like that just really defined like how you guys went to market and how how your brand developed, the different type of people that you worked with in the industry.
Well,
so
like,
much of it came
I'm
back
going
to
to interrupt here for a second.
Yeah.
But like that's how we ended up with you guys, and that's how we ended up with the Born and Raised guys. And that just is you could identify people that you'd like to go hunting with.
Yeah.
And we've had some we've tried some other stuff on, but the stuff that usually sticks are, people that are, like mine, whatever, people that are, that think the same way, or at least similarly enough to where that, or people you'd like to have a beer with.
Totally. So the transition from like the introductory merino launch, obviously I think feedback was good, right? Business was good.
Yeah.
How soon was it before people were like, when are we going to get some like jackets and some mid layers and some outerwear? Like, let's do this, you know?
Yeah.
Which to your point, like earlier, it takes capital to make capital, and the more you get down adding additional SKUs and more expensive average order value items, the more money it takes to build them, right? Like
totally. It was funny because I think we probably came to market in 07 or 08, something like that with this stuff. And then I'd really wanted to do a lightweight, proper, like super nice jacket. And just like with the, it's just, at first you're just naive, and I remember, talking to a really good designer at the time, and I think he's like, it's going to be $15,000 minimum to do 4 prototypes. I'm like, $15,000? I was just like, wow. Oh man, I wish that was still the case, but it was pretty funny. And, so then we just kind of, you couldn't really just do one piece. You couldn't go to a factory and say, I like to build a jacket. They're kind of like, well, they want to build a line,
Sure.
And, so it wasn't until I think probably 2012 that we had, I'm sorry, we didn't start till probably 2011, that process. But I wanted to do a jacket like since day one.
Because I got to imagine part of the challenge of starting a business like this is, capital suggests out of the gate, maybe you can only afford a few SKUs to get going.
Totally.
But then the demand from the market takes over and they're like, well, man, we want everything.
Yeah.
And like, how do you make the decision of where to start? And like,
you're just plugging holes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're kind of like, okay, we make this layer. What is the, a really nice shell would be nice. Because it was funny. I'll tell you an interesting thing is that I was looking at the Hoyt catalog. This is probably about 2010, maybe 11. And, in the Hoyt, in the back, they always have all these pictures of people, trophy shots.
Yeah, trophy shots.
Yeah. And I was looking at this thing and I was like, holy Toledo. In this catalog right here, there was like, I don't know, maybe like 40 guys or whatever it was. Maybe not 40, but, at least 10, if not 20 guys wearing our product. But you couldn't see a single one because it was a base layer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I was like, okay, like the idea is good, but we definitely need to start doing outerwear if people are even going to have any idea what that was kind of an interesting thing. I was like, wow, all these like heavy hitters are wearing First Lite. I know because I got them First Lite.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that was partially it too. We had Steve Ranella. He was wearing First Lite base layers from the get-go, but then we didn't make any outerwear. So that was an important thing for us. That was a big change.
You talked about like organic growth earlier. Cal obviously got Facebook set up when it was still pretty elementary and new, and nobody necessarily knew what Facebook or Instagram would turn into. Was your guys' strategy to do like print advertising? Obviously, you ended up organically in some, different catalogs and things like that. But were you spending ad dollars on like buying full page magazines, print articles, and like
full on?
Did you ever do outdoor TV aside from Steve?
Yes. Yeah. We had, I think Tom Miranda had a show.
Okay.
Old
school.
Yeah. So, but these are the transition. These are the, in these days, the magazines were still like, you had Eastman's, which was, and Hunt and Fool, which we still do stuff in.
Sure.
But that was a battleground, and you had to buy, it's kind of a pay to play thing. I mean, like they'll have some editorial pictures in there, but they definitely are skewing the editorial towards who's advertising in the magazine. And you know what? That's fine with me. It just has to be. You got to keep the doors open, right?
Yeah.
So once we kind of figured that out, we pretty much bought full pages in all the magazines. It was expensive, and it's a funny thing too, because it's not super efficient. Like, it's not only is it expensive, but it's expensive for those guys to print the magazines.
Mm-hmm.
You know. But we would do Western Hunter, Eastman's, Hunt and Fool, and some other magazines.
Did you guys ever think, this is just a funny thing that I always think about, did you ever consider, like, what's my return on my investment on these magazines? Like, how do you calculate conversion?
Oh, I have no idea. I have zero idea. And it's funny, you know, they come up with all kinds of metrics and stuff, and I don't know, it's a bit dubious. You're like, okay, well, you know.
Kind of
like,
a roll of the dice then.
Well, yeah, you're like, oh, this magazine goes to a household and average of 3 people look at it. I was like, wait, what? Like, Dad looks at it and it goes in the garbage can. That's, you know, maybe the son, you know, unless it sits on the toilet or who knows. But it's, I mean, I grew up in a magazine culture.
Yeah.
Like, I remember from the time I could read, I'd go to the grocery store with my mom, and, you know, she'd be like, go stand at the magazine rack.
Yep.
And, you know, that was how you got all information, right? Like, all of it. Like, that was the most current information. So, I don't know. For me, it was easy to do, and it was fun to make that magazine ads.
Yeah.
You know?
That is so interesting how the evolution of media has changed in my lifetime, your lifetime.
Yeah.
You know, when you were a young kid hunting and stuff, the dream was to have an article in a magazine.
Totally.
Or a cover shot if you killed like a giant, which was like possible for me as a kid in Oregon growing up. But that was, you know, yesterday's social media, if you will.
Yeah.
People would share their hunting stories. The magazines were very popular. And then it kind of transitioned from magazine to like the hunting forums.
Yes.
Which then kind of evolved into the social media.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to see like the evolution of how hunting content has been consumed in the past, you know, 10, 12 years.
Well, I mean, it's been a paradigm shift. I mean, to your point, I remember like as a kid, you'd get guns and ammo and I'd be like, okay, you know, this is the 270. Like, how does it ballistically compare to a 30-06? You're like, wow, it's a really flat shooting, you know, like, you know, you just nerded out on this stuff. But it's funny, there was no back and forth. You were just getting fed this information, you know, and then I think, to your point, all of a sudden the forums come out and you're like, wait a minute, I can ask somebody a question and they'll actually, you know, unfortunately half the time you ask me a question, it's the person selling you something. Like,
yeah, the forums are interesting because, yeah, you get like rewarded for your participation, like senior, you know, member, whatever the hell it was.
Yeah.
But man, did that change it? Because, dude, so much information became public. Even like, in a way, I think, and maybe even a negative way, a lot of people were just so open with things that they would share on a public forum. Not, you know, I just drew this tag, XYZ. Does anybody know anything? And next thing you know, it's like people spilling their soul about spots.
Yeah.
Which was wild to me because that stuff is still there today.
That is funny. Yeah. No, there's no question about it. It was in the early days, the whole privacy thing wasn't even a thing. You know, I think people, they thought that it was so anonymous, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, people are like, I know exactly who you are. I know where you live. You know, it's strange.
Well, basically, people would take the concept of like submitting a magazine article, right? And in that case, it was vetted pretty heavily by editors, and you know, not a lot of people got through the gatekeepers there,
right?
But the forum, dude, if you had pictures and time, you could share every story you wanted. And there was no shortage of that.
I'm telling you. And nowadays, you know, somebody gets a picture, they go on Google Earth, they can find out. It's crazy, the stuff that people go through, you know. Like, I'll go on hunting trips sometimes and it's like no horizon lines, nothing. Like, if it goes good, we could take some pictures, but nothing except you and 5 feet around you.
Yeah.
Like they don't even want to know if it's like some weird deciduous trees. Like, no, it's interesting.
That's what's unique is, we've obviously heard feedback and stuff of how social media is ruining hunting and stuff. But I honestly believe the forums had the greatest impact just because the amount of very detailed, specific information that got shared, man. Like people literally be like, I drew this tag in New Mexico in this unit. And here's 27 pictures and here's where I killed the elk. And it's just like, dude, that doesn't go away.
That's interesting. I've never really even thought about that.
And literally to this day, like you can go search archives and like dig up piles of information about, hunts that you may draw today, even like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's like that info, man, like to me would be better served in like a one-on-one communication via email with somebody that wasn't like so open to anybody that can search it, which to me also I think started impacting like point creep and, some of the challenges we're seeing in the Western hunting market today, where it's so hard to get a tag because people started oversharing information about certain units and stuff.
I mean, that there's no question, but who knows, there's an opportunity there too. Because as everybody, runs over and tries to get the same tag, it perhaps opens up other opportunities. There's so many weird tags that as you kind of get into it more, like this year I'm starting to hunt with a muzzleloader. Never did. I'm super excited for the challenge, but like even basic stuff like that. In Idaho, I think they're a lot more, I think they're more rare than just because you have to use no scope and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, it's interesting. There's just, I don't know. I just think that there's, opportunity out there that, as a bunch of people go to a different, apply for some different unit or something that, perhaps they aren't applying for another one,
Things change, right? Like a supposed grade A blue chip unit today may not be by the time you draw it in 5 years or 6 years.
Full on. I mean, look at like, Unit 1 in Arizona. I mean, it's probably getting back, but, had major fires. I mean, you've got areas like that are just out of control, like so good. But yeah, like environmental factors or hunting pressure factors, who knows?
One thing that always stood out, you guys, talking about some of these different hunts, it didn't seem like First Lite ever had like the same maybe marketing strategy with like these $high sheep hunts and you just never saw a lot of other companies in the space seem to kind of hang their hat on.
It was because, and don't get me wrong, it'd be fun to go on a, guided sheep hunt, but for the most part, that our aspiration wasn't that. It wasn't to go pay a bunch of money and kill, some giant state record. The aspiration was to go kill a good, solid animal in probably an over-the-counter unit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, somebody that killed a, 180-inch deer in an over-the-counter unit to us was like way more cool than somebody who got short roped into a 205-inch buck that had been babysitted by 15 guides for all summer long. It was just like, that's just not, I mean, don't get me wrong, I mean, I would love nothing more than to shoot a 205-inch buck, but it's not, it's just, that's just not what we, that's not what we want to advertise as being like normal for us, and it's the same thing, the same ethos with public lands. We're super into supporting public lands because that's, our guy, and that's us, hunting, instead of, we might have to work a little harder, but there's plenty of, 180, 190 and bigger, bucks and, huge bulls if you just want to put down the screws or just get a little bit more creative,
For sure. Yeah, that was always something that was clearly stood out in the early days, still does, even today. It's just, I don't know I think the only sheep hunts you guys have ever been on are the ones that you're staff has been lucky enough to draw.
Yeah, totally.
Or win in a raffle or something at a sheep
that
show.
Was crazy. Yeah. But that, that's unfortunately in Idaho too, there's decent sheep hunting. So people get to go on, if you're a resident, you can.
Pretty good odds for
sheep comparatively. Exactly. So, but yeah, I'll go to New Mexico every now and then, buy a tag just because it's so fun, but definitely it's not like, I'm not like going to go to the White Apache or whatever and just want to buy something, or I don't even have a desire to. Mm-hmm. And I guess maybe that just trickles down, but like, as much as the desert, it's probably kind of fun. It's just not even like remotely the experience I want, Mm-hmm. It's like I want to, go get something in the woods.
On your own accord.
Yeah.
Which again, there's a lot of people that don't have the time or the skill set, and it's all good. But when you have the time to go on a hunt,
totally,
it's not as much about maybe, the outcome of it as much as it is just the work and the experience of it, and being able to do it on your own terms.
I think. I've been on hunts, kind of, that were whatever, canned a little more, and it's all right. It's fun.
Just different.
It's just different. Yeah. I'm not going to lie. It's like pretty nice to be, finished hunting at dark and 5 minutes later you have a cocktail in your hand. Don't get me wrong. But it's like, it's just totally different than, having to kind of work at it and be like, walking around in the dark and,
on camp on your back. And
yeah.
What, if you could only choose like a species to hunt, what are you going with?
I think elk still. I like deer hunting and I'm getting better at it. It's such a radically different skill set.
Yeah.
It's funny. And I drew a really cool deer tag this year, and I've been open today, and I've seen some nice bucks, and it's super fun. But I will say, like, there's just nothing like calling a bull in. I just can't even, describe it, it's, especially if you've seen it and like it has like this moment to work up to it. Like if if there's nothing more exciting than knowing that what bull's coming in, and all of a sudden it just is happening. And I don't know, there's very few things that are that exciting, if you ask me.
We had an opportunity to hunt with Kenton 2018 with the Born and Raised crew. Myself, Casey, Logan. We were in Oregon hunting those dang Roosevelts in that.
Casey shot a nice bull.
He did, yeah.
Yeah.
That was a super fun opportunity.
That was so cool.
To go do that full-fledged hedgehog
mode. That country is so tough, man. Those guys get full props. I'm not sure how excited I would be wake up day after day to go, hands in these hedgehog through the,
That was on Land of the Free 2.0 series. If you guys remember that back in the day, but yeah, Kenton was a tag holder along with Casey, and definitely had a bunch of close calls. But dude, that country is just unforgiving.
And it's a funny thing the way those guys have their methodology so dialed, but it's not like here where you might hear a couple different bulls and you're like, well, that one's really far, or, that one sounds better there. It's like one bugle. You're like, all right, it's on. There's no decision. It could be so far in the biggest hellhole ever. It's like, well, that's our choice. So I don't know. It makes it simple in that regard.
The interesting thing with like the Rosies, I always thought is like, man, if you saw like a fresh rub or you heard a bugle, those guys are just like, we're killing that bull.
Yeah.
Like, because they don't move as far, obviously thicker country, and they seem to be like a little bit more aggressive in their territorial management compared to like what we see out here in, Idaho or Montana or Wyoming or something.
Totally. Those animals are thick too. I mean, when we were taking that one apart, it looked like a horse.
He was giant.
Yeah.
Body-wise.
Yeah.
It's, Yeah, those are fun, man. I want to go do that again. It's been a long time since we've hunted with those guys just because of like schedule conflicts and what have you. But
Yeah,
that was a damn fun time.
that was a good time. That was a great camp. Holy smokes. I like they don't wake up early, but
Yeah.
you spend all day out.
That's right.
That's a funny thing. So, the nighttime's pretty fun.
It was the swing shift, man. I think they said they've killed more bulls between 10 o'clock in the morning and like 2 p.m.
Yeah.
than any other time, which is, it was always like an interesting, thought or whatever. But I guess if you think about it, like a lot of times the First Lite, elk are moving from like a feeding area to a bedding area. And if you have the chance to get in between them or what have you, could be a great time. But nonetheless, when they go bed down, that's kind of where Born and Raised has made their name for covering country. Cat road shuffle is what they've called it, where it's like, bugle, 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 bugle. You get a response at 10:30 in the morning. That bull's probably been bedded down for a little while. And if you can get him to talk, man, good opportunity to like fire him up and like sneak in on him.
Totally. It was, that was fun. That country is so unforgiving too. It's so complex.
Yep.
I mean, remember we got to one point where we had to get to a road that was like 50 yards away, and it took us like an hour and a half or something. I don't know. We had to like
trying to bushwhack through that reed rod.
Yeah, remember the neck vine?
That was gosh.
That was the worst when you got a vine around the neck with spikes on it. That wasn't even that uncommon, but I don't know. It was pretty cool. Overall, other than sometimes having to try to close the distance in super tough terrain, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, the challenge there is just genuinely a lack of shooting lanes.
Totally.
There's, like Casey, the first bull Casey killed in 2017, shot him at 6 yards frontal, and you would never have thought an elk would pop through these trees. And Cody was just reassuring him, like, here's our shooting lane. He's like, there's no lane here.
Shooting lane, yeah.
But that's like a very common occurrence. Those guys have shot a bunch of them under 10 yards, which is just such different country.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. But I don't know. It's pretty cool. Those guys have got a pretty good program going on over there.
Oh, without a doubt. So you guys run the course of the business for a lot of years and grew it substantially. That was kind of like, obviously developed the line further, really started to like do a little bit of everything from outerwear shells to soft shells to mid layers to base layers to accessories to kind of you name it. You guys did everything over the course of like a 10-year run. And then you had an opportunity to sell the company. Walk me through a little bit about like the mindset as an entrepreneur, building something that you're so passionate about, all the hard work and, the nostalgia of out of your garage from a campfire story of like, man, what could we turn this into, to eventually exiting the business that you created?
It was funny. We started down the process. We were just going to sell a chunk because, like I kind of mentioned before, it's tough. Every dollar that you make is basically going back into the company.
Yep.
Because it's basically, it'd be foolish just to not put it back in the company because it's basically doubling, if not more, every year, So we got to a point where we're like, wow, this is a meaningful amount of money. We should try to at least sell, 20, 30%, something like that, At least take enough chips off the table to where, whatever happened, you'd be in pretty good shape, So we'd kind of gone through that process and hired a bank to, do the whole thing. And then it just turned out that we had people that just wanted to buy a lot more than that, and then, that was kind of the deal. We kind of vetted and went through all these kind of different opportunities. And to us, it sounded like the Meat Eater was a really good fit. We'd worked with them for 10 years before, and had, good luck. They didn't want to change any of the culture, and they wanted, of course the company's going to grow, and with that, culture changed a little bit, but it was basically the same, everybody was the same running it. Ross would run it who was my right-hand man basically prior to that. And then
not move the business out of
Ketchum. In fact, moving it to Haley was largely because the vast majority of people live in Haley. So that was, people were pretty stoked on that, I think.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of got to the point where they just decided they wanted the whole thing, and it was a really good fit.
Yeah.
Because we were like, wow, we could really try to go out in the market and potentially squeeze every last drop out of it. But then who knows who we're going to sell to, With these guys, it's a proven entity, at least as proven as it can be at the time, which fortunately our thesis was right. And it's been, this very similar, same kind of deal. But it was, it allowed them to stay here. The employees are all the same employees. So it just was a good fit. I mean, it just kind of gelled. Like, had you told me, 6 months prior that that's how it was going to transpire, I probably would have been like, what? Like, but as it turned out, the more we kind of, you hear horror stories too of companies selling and other things, somebody will come in and strip it out and create some new weird brand based on your brand. And, I'm super pleased at how everything's the same.
Yeah.
I mean, and in fact, some of the stuff has gotten better, I think some of the ability to hire really smart people has, in fact, increased the level of everything,
Yeah.
So,
well, I think it's just a matter of, like anytime you bring in a new ownership group or what have you, they've been able to add more people to like the product side. So the quality of the product is increased, and that is largely based on the capital behind new money. Like,
totally,
you guys aren't bootstrapping out of your, it's just you and Scott trying to make this thing happen for a lot of years, and you guys did a fantastic job, obviously. But there's limitations on how many people you can add, which translates into like research and development, product development.
Totally.
Building out more SKUs or improving the ones you do have. Like, it's just a complex situation. And I think over the last couple of years since the acquisition of Meteor, they've added like a bunch of talented people, to your point, on the product side, on the operations side, just areas that were more difficult probably to do as like two guys running the business.
I mean, without a doubt. Fortunately, the merino was pretty simple, and we got lucky with that. We had just a super good factory. And then, base layers are cool, but mid layers are kind of mid layers. Their fleece stuff is, there's small differences when people try to, say, oh, this has got some, I don't know, wonder fabric. But the fact is that they're not that dissimilar. Merino, there's huge variances in quality of wool, and the way it's treated and stuff like that. And then outerwear, for sure, I think I'm super proud of the new Seek 2.0. We started that project, and
which is now coined the Omen series, right?
Omen, sorry. Yeah. The Omen. And that is a really unique product in the sense that we, kind of varied off of, we were just like, what, we need something that somebody can put on and be dry in a downpour all day. And I think that, it's only been on the market now for, I don't know, a month or two, but I think people are going to be very surprised at how the level of fit, finish, and quality that makes me super happy to be able to have a product that's like as good as anything. I feel like our merino's always been like that. I feel like our down project was super. When that came out, like, I had a bunch of people tell me, like, if that would have been at OR that year, it probably would have been the nicest down jacket in the building, which was cool because we did a bunch of different technologies with the down that really hadn't been done before, But but I think that the new Omen is really good. I mean, sometimes the technology stories really kind of make me happy when you can come up with stuff. I mean, obviously, like, the wool pants are super cool. They're silent, and then and a lot of it has to do with who's designing it. Like, all the little features totally add up. But it's, I don't know, for me, kind of being a tech nerd, sometimes it's really cool to experience like fabrics that actually like
perform
in
in the field and stuff. Yeah,
totally.
It's super cool to see how the product continues to just evolve.
You've got to, it's there's, but there's at least 2 other companies that make good stuff.
Yep.
So if you're not trying to, do your best, then I don't know. At least one of them's going to pass you.
It's like this crazy, man. Like, a lot of respect for any company, because the new norm is that every year you need to have new and better things.
Yeah.
Whether that's a bow manufacturer, that's coming up with a new bow every year.
That's a knife
Holy
fight.
cow.
Holy Toledo. I mean,
Talk
those
about
guys.
A lot of effort. And then even in, the technical clothing space is just constantly putting out better products on the market.
It's true. I mean, it's like, if we had to go back and wear some of the stuff that, even 20 years ago, you'd just be hating it. I mean, our stuff is so much more, it's more breathable, it's more waterproof, it's, I don't know, you're just way more comfortable.
It's just stressful in my mind, because dude, trying to plan out for like 2025 stuff.
Oh boy. Yeah.
When, 2023, 2024 hasn't even hit the market yet. Like, that is just like complex problems that go well beyond my capacity.
Well, the thing about it is you do all this different stuff, and, you have charts built and whatever. And at the end of the day, I don't care who you are, you're still kind of throwing darts at a dartboard. You know what I mean? Like, you can have, people, statistics are always looking backwards, right? I think it's a funny thing, and I think people lose track of that fact, that they're like, well, according to statistics, I'm like, well, they're important, don't get me wrong, but you're still looking at what happened, at least whatever, in the past.
Yep.
So there's always that just kind of, you just have to have some feel. You have to be able to, when you come out with a new product, you have to feel like, all right, this is going to be a hit, and sometimes you're right, and sometimes you're wrong.
So hard.
I know, it's so funny.
I was talking to Chase about that. He's the operations guru, and I'm like, dude, your job seems so challenging to me, like trying to forecast new SKUs coming out and like what the sell-through is going to be and how much to order, and, never want to run out, but at the same time, you never want to have too much. Like,
yeah.
And there isn't a great like strategy behind it necessarily.
And Chase is so awesome, man. He's so analytical too. I guarantee he has every bit of information in front of him, and he's still like, oh my gosh, how am I going to figure this? You know what I mean? And
for sure.
But then, obviously, then when you come out with a new product, let alone a new category, you've got, a minimal amount of data to build order from, you kind of know what maybe a similar product did, but it's a tough job
for sure. What kind of advice do you have for new entrepreneurs that are kind of getting going, starting their own business, based on like all the experience that you had with First Lite?
Oh man, you've got to really enjoy it, and I would say that like a lot of times, people think that they want to just scale. Like, they're like, I'm going to start this company and I'm going to grow it like gangbusters, and even if I have to sell a certain percentage, whatever, but that is, you want to avoid like having to break off a piece as long as you possibly can. You'll get to a point where it's inevitable. Like with us, we sold 20% when we got the outerwear because the bank at those times, bank wouldn't give anybody any money. But I think a lot of people, even in the early stages, will try to like kind of overvaluate and then try to seek money, and which in of itself, the activity of going and trying to seek money is taking your eye off the prize. You know what I mean? But I would say that, try to do your very best to bootstrap for as long as you can.
Yep.
Because the last thing you want to do is end up owning 10% and putting in 100% of the work.
Yeah.
And I think that, that's, I think, is probably where a lot of companies fail.
Yeah. That's a good point. I think it's, starting a new business can be challenging in a lot of different ways. And a lot of people have great ideas, but they don't maybe have the backing to like turn it into a legitimate business. And then to your point, they kind of go down the road of chipping away at their equity stake in an effort to raise the cash they need to just get the business going. And before you know, a lot of folks may turn around and be like, dude, I don't even own a controlling majority anymore.
Totally. Or, people that get, really in their heads concerned with market share. They're like, if I don't gobble up a bunch of market share, which is kind of an internet / technology kind of theme, like what we're going to do is spend all this money and gobble up all this market share, and then we'll backfill with the profit later. But I think in a lot of these companies that doesn't really hold true. You just have to, you just keep sustaining, and as long as you can get you want it to burn as hot as you can, but you don't want it to burn you. And I think that happens so much. And it was all new to me when I started a company. I didn't know things are going great. And it's like, I can't afford a Snapple. Right. If I buy anything you buy is literally, costs 3x, 4x, 5x next year, because that's just something that you couldn't spend on the company to buy more product. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's this weird, it almost makes you poorer in a sense for a while, because you're like, of course I don't need I don't want a new pickup truck, because by the time I take that, whatever it is to buy the pickup truck, that's just X number of, stuff I couldn't buy to sell again, So it's, you've got to, and I don't want to scare people off because, obviously if it goes well, the end result's good, but there's definitely, that's something to be considered,
Sure. I still love the concept of people taking a risk on themselves and, betting on their passion, assuming it's something they're into. And and
it has to be.
Yeah.
Because it will, it gets to be to the point where you, I'll say, hunting 24/7, to me, towards the end, I wasn't nearly as excited about hunting season as I am now after 2 years. Mm-hmm. After 2 years stepping away from it, I'm frothing right now. I'm just I drew a good tag and I can't, I love, it's but because it's tough when it's 24/7, the day after hunting season's over, people are, you're having to talk about hunting more, instead you'd rather, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So we hear a lot of people that obviously want to get into the hunting industry in various capacities. And I think one of the things we've noticed over the years is, man, a lot of people that work in the space, they don't get to hunt as much.
Right.
Their time is consumed building the category, the product for, peak sales to happen just before season. And they may be, in different commitments during season. They don't have the time, kind of like a fish and game officer. Those guys don't have much time to hunt either. They're out in the field working during the season. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword depending on potentially what your role will look like or what company in the hunting space. But I think that to me, it's go find something that gives you the autonomy if you're really interested in hunting that can allow you to take time off during the season, whether that's, running your own business or a seasonal business, whatever that might be. But
totally,
sometimes working in the industry isn't as nice for hunting as you might think.
Yeah, I mean, I see that with shop owners sometimes, they're just, neck deep, tuning bows and some, they come into the thing and it's hunting season and, somebody's got some crazy tag and their bow exploded and you're just like, okay, come in. And, it's there's a lot of that. So I don't know, but I think if you think you have a good idea, I think you kind of got to go for it. You're going to be way more pissed that if it fails, you'd be way more pissed if you never gave it a shot.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So
I think there's so much reward too in being able to wake up and truly be your own boss. You're not.
Yeah.
You and I talked a little about this beforehand, but like our generation and stuff, we didn't love to be micromanaged. Like we wanted the autonomy to like, hey, here's the goal, go figure out how to get to it. And
Totally.
I'll ask questions if I need some help. And owning your own business is means towards that end. If you don't want to be told what to do necessarily, you just are able to control kind of your schedule and what's, the way you manage your team and your company. And that's pretty special too.
It is. I think it makes it more difficult while at the same time easier. I mean, I should say you have to do more work, but it makes it easier to do more work.
Yeah.
When it's your deal, you're not like, oh man, my boss, he's driving me crazy. You're like, all right, you just do it.
Yeah.
But you find yourself probably working more than you should, certainly at first, but it's just how it is. You don't even really think of it like so much as like a burden. It's just something that must be done.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, we feel that for what we do. Like I feel so grateful that I don't look at Friday as like this relief. Like, it's Friday, it's the week.
Yeah.
Because like whether it's Saturday or Sunday or Wednesday, to me, that's all similar. Like it's your passion, things need to be done, they get done. But it's a good feeling, not feeling like you need to like check out and walk away from something like you might working for someone else that maybe you don't enjoy your boss or you don't enjoy the company or the position, whatever that might be. And you're just like so relieved when Friday comes around and Monday is just, terribly dreadful. Like I don't feel that way. And I have before working in corporate positions, but that's a damn good feeling too.
Yeah, I like it. I do miss the Friday feeling though. That's for sure. You're like, it's Friday at 5:00. Like, that kind of goes away. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Maybe after the shows are over, but the last thing you feel like doing is cracking a beer after a SHOT Show. You're home from SHOT Show. You're like, I need to
sleep.
Or something like that. But no, it's funny. I'd say that is completely I share that experience. Like you've got a little bit of weekend maybe, but for the most part, you're on the schedule of the company.
Yeah. So it's been a couple of years. Do you have the burning desire to like go build something different now?
No,
not
right now.
One and done for now?
Well, who knows? I've got one in college and then another is a senior, another freshman. I feel fortunate, whatever. I like, going and watching soccer games and that kind of shit. It's fun.
Yeah.
So I imagine that, in a few years when I'm like an empty nester, to be totally honest, I don't really have much control over like that as far as my brain goes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't want to do anything right now, I guess, like except go hunting and stuff all the time,
Yeah, be a dad.
Yeah. But I will say I could wake up tomorrow and have some idea and it's just like, okay, here we go. Like it's kind of weird, but then it just becomes totally consuming, you know?
Yeah.
But for some reason right now, maybe it's like, I don't know, I haven't had the desire to do something in that regard, Yeah,
you seem like you have a bit of the Joe Rogan kind of like personality. When you jump into something new, you go deep.
Oh man, so deep. It's like full on OCD. Like, yeah, always, and unfortunately sometimes there's too many things going on, so it makes it difficult, but, to kind of, it gives you like anxiety, like, oh, okay, I gotta go shoot my bow and then blah, 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 so, but yeah, I don't know, business-wise, not yet.
Yeah.
And I don't know if ever, but I'm sure, I think one day I'm going to wake up or, and all of a sudden have to do it,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What that is, I have zero idea.
Yeah.
It might be in the hunting industry, but I will say I have been really enjoying hunting.
Yeah. With the ability to have a little bit more time, to dedicate towards it, where you're not maybe feeling like you got to be back at the shop and like planning for new stuff or selling through old stuff or whatever.
It's so funny you say. I'm just starting to get that now.
Yeah.
Like I identify that I'm like, what are you in a hurry for? Just take a nap in the woods or just like slow down. I don't know. It's a funny thing. It's been whatever.
I gotta imagine it's similar to when people like quote unquote retire.
Yeah.
Like I saw my parents go through it. I've seen other friends' parents go through it of literally having to like disconnect from what they were used to for 30 years.
Yeah.
And that transition sometimes took some time to be like, man,
totally.
How do I allocate? Like, what's my new schedule like? What am I going to be doing? It's like a completely different thing. And when you're owning a company and there is a lot of pressure, like that creates stress.
You're just in a hurry.
Yeah.
You don't even know why.
Yeah.
Like, what am I? Is it the company because you spent whatever, so many years, decades, just having too much stuff to do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's kind of funny, but I think it definitely makes you a better hunter when you can just take a deep breath and, just the ability to sit in total silence for an extra hour every day, guaranteed hunting wise, you're going to have way more success over the years, just sitting there, you'll hear, a couple bucks getting a fight or, something, but it's funny. Like, people that are truly patient like that are definitely guys that end up killing a lot of stuff.
Gosh, ain't that the truth?
Right?
It's so true. I noticed it. We went to Hawaii this year and did some axis deer hunting.
Oh, I love that. It's the best. It might be the best tasting animal. I don't know.
My wife and I are convinced it's the best.
I love it.
We just had steaks the other night. But, over the years, like filming for the Hush stuff, like we have historically been in groups of like 3 or more. Always have somebody holding the camera, generally like someone else spotting or with you or whatever. And, as a kid growing up, like did a lot of hunting by myself. Shared camp, but then you'd be off hunting by yourself all day.
Totally.
And to your point, it allows you a chance to kind of like slow down. And I feel like, I don't even know it's justified, but just the way internally I've ever processed it is with a camera person or maybe somebody else, like there's pressure to maybe not be as patient. Like, man, these guys are just like, I want to go put this long stalk. It might be taking me 7 hours, but dude, those guys are they're here with me. Like they're going to be bored out of their mind.
Right.
So we don't get out as often, like it's just us, just solo. And in Hawaii, I got to like go out for like a full day, just carrying my bow around. And dude, it was nice.
Yeah, it's pretty funny, huh?
And
it's so meditative, right?
I still captured some stuff through like GoPros and handhelds and things, but I didn't feel the pressure to like rush anything.
Yeah.
So I could be exceptionally patient. Ended up killing a deer right at last light, which was freaking awesome.
That is
sweet.
Awesome.
And it was just reminded me of like, man, it's pretty nice to go out just by yourself. And to your point, just really slow things down and be like, all right, there's no rush here. I don't need to get back to anything. I don't have anything looming over me. I don't have anybody here that I might feel inclined to kind of rush through because I don't want to leave them hanging.
Right.
Just going to go enjoy the moment, slow down. If I need to take 4 hours on this stock, then that's what it's going to take.
That's exactly right. It's funny too, the decision-making process when you're totally by yourself is funny. Instead of, you get to where you're like, do I want to go there? I don't know. Do I? You have this like internal conversation. Whereas if you're with somebody, you point right or left and they'll say right. And you're like, all right, let's go. Like, you don't, if you get to a place where you don't really care which way you go.
Yeah.
But when you're by yourself, those decisions are so much more like, wow, let me think. The last time, I don't know. I like it. I like it. I like it to a certain extent.
Yep.
I must say, I don't think I'd want to go for a week by myself.
That's hard,
I think
man.
I'd start talking to myself. It'd be like, I'd like talk to a basketball or something, But
those guys, and I feel like they're all mule deer guys that do this, but the dudes that'll just go out solo for like 10 days by themselves.
Yeah.
They kill deer, but I'm with you. I like the camaraderie of, I enjoy going out like by myself for the hunt, let's say afternoon, evening, full day.
Yeah.
But coming back to like a shared camp where you can kind of share stories and have conversations
100%.
is really what I enjoy the most about hunting. You know, that was how I grew up doing it. And
Yeah.
I'm with you. I think I've done it the most for 5 days solo. And I was just like, dude,
full pull.
definitely. So yeah, the 5 days, man, it's like that was a push. It was like early archery deer hunt too. So you got like your morning window and your afternoon window or your evening window, and then long ass days.
What would you do?
Read a book, sleep.
Yeah.
I mean, it was tough.
I had 4 or 5 days I did, but different. I'd sleep in a van, you know?
Oh yeah.
But I had a tag, that, you know, I'd have friends come, but yeah, that daytime is weird. It's hot. And you're like reading a book, but you're kind of all by yourself and you just kind of start walking around. And then, you know, I'd like stump shoot for like 15 minutes and be like, oh.
Yeah, you can only nap for so long in the middle of the day. It's like, oh God.
I know.
Yeah, those ones are tough, man. It'd probably be tough too if you got, winter stormed in a tent for multiple days or something.
By yourself?
Yeah, you hear that on people that maybe do like sheep hunts or late mule deer hunts or something where there's a lot of inclement weather and you're just in a tent for days on end. That would be brutal too.
That would be brutal. At least it wouldn't be hot.
that's or dealing with the bug situation.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it's it's fun to go out and experience like the spot and stock though, just by yourself with no pressure. And the decision making is a funny point you bring up because we're always like a very diplomatic group. Like, I don't know, what do you think? I don't know, what do you think? And like, shit, somebody just needs to take charge and like, what are we doing? Where are we going? Yeah, kind of need to have like a leader, if you will, when it comes to planning.
Well, totally. I mean, but you know, it's funny when you're chasing animals. Sometimes it's just so feel and luck. You know, do I go right or left? And you don't really realize at the time you're probably making a decision that's going to be either lead to success or lead to failure. Yeah, but it's like, and you have no reason to make either one. It's, you know, other than maybe, you know, doing a wind check or something. But yeah, I don't know. I enjoy it all. I enjoy it by myself, and it's more serious if you're by yourself, I think. Yeah. You know, like maybe you have the opportunity to put way more pressure on yourself because it's just you. You know, maybe that's why it's more meditative or something, because you're like, all right, I've got to get this done, you know, and you're probably at the end of the day, who knows, maybe a little more successful because you're checking the wind and you never put your head down. Like your head's kind of on a swivel, you know? Yeah, I don't know.
Definitely in the moment, I think, more when it's just you.
For sure.
Which is, it's fun, man. I think it's cool if you have the opportunity to do a little bit of both, you know? Yeah. Go do some self stuff, but then also have a chance to go out with some friends or some family and do, you know, that's what's 100%. Fun about having an opportunity to have a few different tags throughout the fall that are everyone's a little bit different. Yeah. As it gets progressively later into the season, the days get shorter, you know, you can kind of change the style of the hunt that you're going on. And totally from the early bivvy hunts where you're out there on your own and to like the late season kind of cabin potential feel or everything in between, man. I enjoy all of it for sure.
I do too. You know, you need one to appreciate the other. And it's funny that, you know, you kind of mention that because sometimes people are out here in the West are like, how do you go whitetail? How do you sit in a tree? And it's like, how do you not? It's the best thing ever. After like having a super physical season of elk hunting, you get to climb up in a tree and just sit there and listen, watch, and the action comes to you. You know, whatever, you're, you know, on your phone, texting funny texts to other people. You're like, this is the greatest thing ever. Like, I don't know. I love it. Like, I don't know. I think when you have both one or the other, they both they both just make you appreciate each
Absolutely.
one.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned you got a couple good tags in hand.
Yeah.
Which one are you more excited for? The archery one that's just opened up, or the Muzzy?
We'll see. The archery one, I've been putting in for this tag for a long time, and I've seen some huge bucks. So right now, I'm pretty excited. But that being said, learning how to shoot a muzzle loader and stuff seems pretty fun. Like I haven't been doing like zero gun hunting for probably 4 or 5 years. And I don't know why. It's just, I just lean more towards the archery thing. Yeah. So I'm super excited to get, it's just fun to learn something new.
Yeah.
It's all, like I got super into shooting guns. And it was fun building bullets and, getting all that, just technical stuff. And I enjoyed it for a while. But to be totally honest, like the better you get, it almost kind of, for me personally, takes a little bit away from hunting, when you're like, I was shooting a lot, to get to be like a, 1,000-yard dude where it can be, and some reasonably strong. I mean, it all boils down to wind after you get everything figured out, and how good you are reading the wind, and that part about it's fun, but it's also like, I don't know, it just maybe eventually just took away from the experience because I like to just rather be really close, I love the stock and stuff like that, but who knows? But with the muzzleloader thing, now I'm just really, once I drew the tag, I just instantly got super excited about it. I was like,
have you gone full deep on the Muzzy stuff?
Oh, dude. Such a nerd. Yeah. Oh, full on. I mean, our stuff out here is a little different because you can't use 209 primers. You've got to be really quite primitive, you know? So there's really not that much. I mean, I just need to start practicing and hopefully get to be, 175, maybe a 200-yard guy. I mean, it's like, it all depends on how good you can see. You know, it's a different thing than having a scope. So I just have to start practicing, but I don't even want to start until this season's over, and then I'll focus on that and just start sending lead down. But I don't know. It's just fun learning something new,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty fired up on that. But, I don't think there's really that deep of a dive to do versus, say, New Mexico, where those guys are shooting out to, 800 yards or something, and then you've got to build charts and, it's 5 layers deeper than us where you have a peep sight. And it's just like, kind of like somebody's handing you a Red Rider and they're like, well, go keep practicing until,
It's, that'll make it a little bit easier because to your point is like, man, if you have decent eyesight, then you're going to have like a max range of probably like 200 yards.
Yeah.
Which, that's interesting. There's going to be a lot of talk, I think, coming up about, I've heard Utah making rumors of going back to more primitive muzzle loading right now. Like same kind of thing in Utah. You could shoot like the long range stuff, but I keep hearing talks that they're going to maybe consider changing that back to the old school way in the years to come.
I think a lot of people lose. This is what I hear. I don't want to start some big debate, but I've heard that I've heard this from a lot of guides, frankly, that the modern muzzleloader loses way more game than the bows.
Interesting.
Because you shoot at 500 yards, there's a big puff of smoke, and you're like, I didn't hit it or whatever. Like that was really, that's a big concern, Whereas if you've got a 200-yard range, you're for sure going to go check for blood.
I've seen that too, even on like people filming their, friends shooting with a muzzleloader, and they're set up right behind them. So to your point, the smoke plumes and you can't see anything.
Right.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that, but that's an interesting point, man.
I don't know. And then, like I said, it could be just full conjecture. Like it happened one time and it's a thing. So I don't want to.
Yeah.
But I do, I don't know. It's appealing to me to have something that it's still a freaking challenge. I mean, 200 yards is not a long way, Yeah. So we're going to see. Maybe I'll hate it, but I always liked, I don't know. I got to try it out.
Sure. Well, man, I appreciate you sharing your story, dude. It's such a cool It's a cool story, dude. It's an entrepreneurial's dream.
Well, thanks.
It really is. I think being able to have like a front row seat at it has been really inspiring, you know? Like I think you inspire a ton of us that have worked alongside you for a lot of years, and it couldn't happen to a couple nicer guys than you and Scott, man. So,
well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Right on.
Appreciate you, man. See you guys on the next episode, and thanks for tuning in.
Perfect.